All right. Hello and welcome back, my law lovers, to another episode of Lawyer Up Celeb Legal Talk. And I'm back this morning. Okay, guys. So there is another story. It's on Diddy. And honestly, last night I saw this lawsuit when it dropped, but I was tired and I was thinking, God dang, another one. I mean, we literally just had a lawsuit drop on him 2 days ago. And then within a matter of 24 hours, there's another one. And this one is a little heartbreaking because you know what? It does talk about, or it includes allegations around Kim Porter. So to me, it almost sounds like the victim in this case. And these are all allegations. We don't know if it's true. And not only that, Kim can't even defend herself. She's not here, right? But it does appear as if the victim has become the abuser. And so you get that element in this lawsuit when you talk about Kim. This has to be heartbreaking. I mean, absolutely heartbreaking for Kim's children, Diddy's children with Kim, because there's just so much out there on their parents, and it's back to back to back. It's like this is nonstop. You can't even stop it. There hadn't been any other tales or stories surrounding their mom, but at this point, now you have the first story complaint where it includes Kim and her interactions with Diddy. Not only that, you also have the stories around, and they're rumors at this point, allegations, accusations. None of this stuff has been proven, but you also have these stories that continuously plague children, Diddy's children, those twins and Christian, as well as Diddy, about his involvement in her death. And it hasn't been proven, but so many people have suspected his involvement in that. So this just has to be a rough time for them, equally as for him. I mean, he's just lost so much. I was kind of reflecting on his story because I just covered it 2 days ago, right? So I was sort of reflecting on it, and I thought, this guy was respected, revered. The community had began to love. I don't know if we all loved him. Let me just be honest. I don't know if we all was loving Diddy his entire career, but he did stand for. So he was standing in recent times for what we considered Black excellence. I mean, he promoted that. He promoted that along with Jay-Z. That was like one of his big things: Black excellence, right? But in just these recent allegations since November, he has just betrayed that trust and those values on the community. And, I started to wonder, like, I mean, we know he's a Scorpio. Let me just say that. So I'm an astrologer in my pastime, guys, a real astrologer. We know he's a Scorpio. They do deal these issues that we're seeing, about him. Yeah, these are typical Scorpio traits: the compulsion, the obsession, the sexual nature stuff, even the issues with children, also a Scorpio issue. That's the negative side. I mean, Scorpio has some great traits as well. But, so I was thinking, I was like, did this start off as sexual exploration, sexual freedom, and his need to explore, which is fine if that was what he was doing in his younger years. But it looks like, let me just say this: sexual expression, freedom can lead to self-expression. A lot of people want to do that when they're younger. Fulfillment, you feel like you have autonomy over the things that you desire and that you want to explore. And it kind of helps set your identity. But this looks like sexual freedom that has been unchecked, unbridled, and has just turned into something moral decay or some sort of exploitation and just like extreme abuse of people, of women. I mean, he has really caused some lasting wounds in some of these women. I thought about, again, that story. I mean, there's Cassie's story that is heartbreaking. I think we all recognize the psychological trauma that she clearly has gone through. But not only that, but in this last case, not this one that we're going to go over today, but the one before that, with what's this girl's name? Crystal McKinney. Again, with saving the garment for 21 years. I keep thinking about that, the trauma that you must have experienced, that you felt like you needed to hold on to that day where this happened to you. And then to know that your career was being sidelined because you didn't give in. It's disturbing, and like I said, it's just a lot of trauma and a lot of secrecy and a lot of shame that has come about through the revelations of the things that he was doing And again, it's all alleged right now because, Diddy has maintained his innocence for the most part, with the exception of that video where he did acknowledge that it's him on the video and he apologized, but we're going to assume that he was speaking about Cassie and not all these other lawsuits that have come out. It's surely not the last two. So I'm just going to assume that he's maintained his innocence. And even with the fake apology that he gave, it is what it is. Anyway, so let's take a look. But these younger artists that are coming up, I hope you look at this as some sort of roadmap in terms of the things that can happen down the road if you're living your life this way. You need to make sure that you have some sort of moral compass as you're navigating in these positions of power, and you have the opportunity to take advantage or abuse other people's weaknesses. Okay, let me just say that. I'm off my soapbox now. All right, so let's take a look at this latest lawsuit. Let me find it here. Give me a second. Okay. All right, so Leah, let me bring this up so we can take a look at it. It's so hard getting situated with my setup here. I'm still kind of struggling with that, but okay, so here we go. Give me a second here. Okay, so you guys should be able to see it. I've tried to sort of expand the screen a little bit so it's larger. Let me see if I can do that just a little bit more for you guys. All right, so let me take a look how that looks. All right, yeah, that's pretty large, right? So I think you can see it. Let me move my monitor here so that we can better view. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this complaint. Let's see what it says. And again, this came out last night. It was hot off the press. I saw it. I got the alert and I was like, I'm not covering another freaking Diddy story right now. Like, I'm just not doing it. Like, it's like one after. This is the 8th lawsuit, guys. The 8th. This is a lot. Okay, so this girl, the plaintiff, her name is April Lampros. She's suing. I feel like I'm just repeating myself, regurgitating the same thing I said the day before. She's suing Sean Combs, Bad Boy Records, Arista Records, Sony. She's listed some Jane Does. She has John and Jane Does 1 through 10, and then ABC Corp's 1 through 10, okay, as the defendants. It is being filed in New York in the Supreme Court of the state of New York. And you know what's interesting? So the last case that was filed is a different attorney, someone based out of New York, but a different attorney. This one is another Tyrone Blackburn. Tyrone's going to be freaking rich off of Diddy. I mean, like, honestly, this is going to go on, because especially if the feds end up charging him, then these cases will stop. All these civil cases will go on halt while he deals with the federal trial. If that happens, we don't know if that's happening or not, but I'm just saying. But you got like 8 cases that he's going to have to run down and deal with. And it's just, honestly, those kids, and I'm just thinking finances, with their lifestyle, what they're used to, and what they're likely going to have to deal with. This is a lie. He has really ruined his legacy. Okay, so let's keep going. All right, to name defendants who are at the moment summoned, okay, to answer the complaint in this action and serve a copy of your answer, or if the complaint is not served within the summons, to serve a notice. So he's been served. Serve a notice of appearance on the plaintiff's attorney. They're giving him 20 days after the service of the summons, exclusive of the day of the service or within 30 days after the service is complete. If the summons is not personally delivered to you within the state of New York, so probably 30 days, all right? If you fail to appear or answer, judgment will be taken for the relief demanded herein. I wonder how much they're asking for. Okay, so a copy of the summons was filed with the clerk of the Court of New York, County, I think this was County New York, in compliance with the statute. Okay, I'm not reading. I'm going to go on down. All right, let's, and notice, look at this, guys. Plaintiff is April Lampros, by and through her attorney, Tyrone A. Blackburn Law, T.A. Blackburn Law, PLLC, alleges as follows. Do you see that? I mean, Tyrone is on his neck, guys. Tyrone is on him. He might as well just have he doesn't have all of the civil complaints that are filed against Puffy, but he might as well, because, I mean, he's not letting up on Diddy at all. Not at all. Okay, but the introduction says that plaintiff Lampros brings this action seeking injunctive declaratory and monetary relief against the defendants in the violation of victims of gender motivated violence protection law, Gender Motivated Violence Act. This is New York City Administrative Code, and they give the code. The cause of action is timely under the Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Protection Law, the Gender Motivated Violence Act, NYC, and they give the administrative code, because it arises out of conduct that's perpetrated against the plaintiff who was the statutory age or older at the time. Now, they give some footnotes here to kind of talk about the New York City Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Act, but we've talked about this so much. It's created a look back window, started on March 1st of 2023. It runs for 2 years, and it's basically giving survivors of gender motivated violence time that allows them to sue their abusers regardless of when the abuse occurred. So, it's your word against theirs. You can prove it in court. You got 2 years to bring action against your abuser. So that's what this is. Okay, let's keep going. And they go into a little bit more information in terms of what this Gender Motivated Violence Act really is. What is considered what's considered intimate assault? It's an act of gender motivated violence. Under the law, it's coerced intimate activity. It's dehumanizing. It's fear inducing, malice or ill will. It's based on gender. It's apparent from the alleged commission of the act itself. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the law, but we probably are familiar with it because we've heard a lot about it. Okay, so I'm going to move on down to number 3. It says the suit arises from the actions of the defendant, Sean Combs, Diddy. Okay, Brother Love. Brother Love was getting too much love, or really taking love. But anyway, the suit arises from the actions of defendants Sean Combs, Bad Boy Records, Arista Records, the subsidiary of Sony Music, and the John and Jane Doe's 1 through 10 ABC Corps, and 1 through 10 in their participation in the harm visited upon the plaintiff, April Lampros. It says April is a Caucasian female, so this is the second white female. She's a Caucasian female and a United States citizen who was at all relevant times relevant to the action, of resident of and domiciled in the state of New York. Okay, so Mr. Combs is a citizen of the United States and was at all relevant times, a resident and domiciled in the state of New York. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs is currently domiciled in California, but he's both California and Florida. So upon information and belief, Mr. Combs divides his time equally between both states. All right, so he's bi-coastal. Upon information and belief, AR is a global music company headquartered. They give the address for AR, and then they talk about upon information and belief, BB is a global music company. They give the address for that. And SME is a global music company. They give the address for that. I'm telling you, there's some of these record companies, they don't want to be bothered with this thing. I'm sure they are just like, what a effing nightmare. I'm sure they're like that. Number 9, during the relevant period, defendants John and Jane Doe's 1 through 10, currently unknown individuals or employees who aided and or abetted in the commission of conduct complained of herein, or who either acted within the scope of their employment. Okay, so defendants ratified, embraced, added to the conduct. As parties engage in the discovery, plaintiff retains the right to amend the complaint, so she can amend it, to add these individual employees by name. During the relevant period, the defendants ABC Corps 1 through 10 are currently unknown entities who employed the plaintiff or aided and or abetted in the commission of conduct complained of herein. And as the parties engage in the discovery, plaintiff retains the right to amend the complaint to add these entities or individuals by name. This might be, I feel like all these complaints are it's going to be years before this is settled. Maybe going back and forth. And the discovery piece is going to be brutal if he doesn't settle. All right, so number 11, jurisdiction and venue. Okay, so the court has personal jurisdiction over the defendant under and consistent with the constitutional requirements of due process, and that the defendant acting directly or through his agents or apparent agents committed one of the following: transaction of any business within the state. So he's had transactions for business within the state, the making of a contract within the state, the commission of a tort act that occurred within the district, and ownership or use or possession of real property, real estate within the state. So New York has personal jurisdiction. Now he's got some pictures here. She kind of looks like that girl from yesterday. She's got very similar eyes. Let me just keep going. Okay, summary of factual accusations. Okay. Upon information and belief, Miss Lampros met Mr. Combs in 94. So listen, this was a long time ago. So this had to be almost 30 years ago. This was almost over 30 years ago. So again, I just wonder if he was in that, exploration phase of his life then. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He took it too far. She met him in early 94 after the birth of his first son, Justin. And at the time, Miss Lampros was a college student at FIT studying fashion design and marketing. And to impress her, Mr. Combs would often invite her to the Bad Boy recording studios in New York City. Oh, that was the BB. Hold on. Because I was thinking BB, who was that? Okay, so what is SME? SME and AR. Hold on. I'm sorry, guys. Oh, okay. Arista Records, Sony Music Entertainment. Okay, yeah. All right. Duh, had brain fart. All right, let me go down. Yeah, okay, so he was inviting her to the recording studio. This is a picture of her, I guess, and a friend. They redacted the friend's face, but this is Diddy before he got his mouth done. Well, look at this. Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about him. But she definitely has a striking resemblance to that girl from yesterday with the eyes. Like the eyes seem to be sort of piercing or whatnot. But okay, so this is Miss Lampros, Diddy, Sean Combs, and a friend in the Bad Boys Studios. Says when she met Mr. Combs, Miss Lampros shared with him her dreams of working in the fashion industry since she was going to FIT. And Mr. Combs promised to mentor her and help her, introducing her to music and fashion industry executives, as well as assisting her with finding work. Okay. So since Mr. Combs love bombed her. So if you guys don't know what love bomb is, it's when you start, I love you so much, and I'm sending you all these flowers, and I'm doing all these nice things, and just like overwhelming someone with all of these niceties, so to speak. It says he showered her with gifts and flowers, as evidenced by one of the cards that accompanied the flowers that Mr. Combs sent Mrs. Lampros for Valentine's Day. And let me tell you, let me just go back. Hold on. I think women still like to have niceties and, gifts and flowers. I don't want to be like love bombing is bad, but if it's too much and if it's being used for manipulation, then yeah, it's bad. But yeah, everybody's likes, people like gifts. Anyway, so he sent her a Valentine's Day card. It says, "The Daily Blossom, Happy Valentine's Day, Love, Puffy." Okay. Some bad handwriting. Surely that's not his handwriting, but yeah. All right. So Mr. Combs went so far as to invite Miss Lampros to his first Father's Day celebration. The invitation to the event is below. Okay. Dear friends, on June 19th, 1994, Bad Boy Entertainment would like for you to come and join. This is in his early years. And join us in celebrating the original Bad Boy's first Father's Day celebration. For this occasion, there is a dress code. No jeans or sneakers will be permitted. The spectacular event will be held at the Capitol located on First Avenue, 61st Street. Is this in DC? At the Capitol? This is New York. Okay, because First Avenue, I was thinking. Okay, the event will begin promptly at 10 p.m. and will go on until. Please come early to avoid any inconvenience. For further information, you can contact the offices of Bad Boy Entertainment. Remember, the dress code will be strictly enforced, so dress your best. Thanks for the support. And then they have a picture of him with, dare I say, allegedly Wolf's son, because this boy looks 0% like Diddy. I don't see nothing there. I mean, he looks like his mama, but he absolutely looks like, again, not saying this is true, but I mean, others have said it, but yeah, he's striking resemblance to Wolf, the guy that passed, that died, that was Diddy's good friend. Definitely doesn't look like Diddy. I mean, there's nothing about him that looks like Diddy there. I wouldn't even include that. It's almost like, it's crazy. All right, so a month after the Father's Day event, Mr. Combs invited Miss Lampros to an exclusive Bad Boy party with performances by Usher, Craig Mack, and Biggie, the Notorious B.I.G. What is this? Life is not a game. Only the fittest and the most aggressive will survive. Sleeping is forbidden. A second cannot be wasted. 1 second are lost, you lose. And losing is for losers, Puff Daddy. Well, he definitely wanted to be great. I'll say that. And then he has his Bad Boys about to set it off. He has Date, Capital, Super DJ, Puff Daddy on the ones and twos. So, yeah. All right. So let's keep going. It says, upon information and belief, what Mr. Combs displayed as kind gestures quickly manifested into aggressive, coercive, and abusive relationship based on intimacy. And these acts were not isolated to the state of New York. So this is where the trafficking alleged trafficking is probably being introduced, as Mr. Combs would fly Miss Lampros to Atlanta to see him, where they would spend time together. Miss Lampros would also fly to Miami to see Mr. Combs at his home. And so you see her here in both photos. What am I looking at over here on this side? Okay, somebody's arm there. I was trying to figure out what is this? Okay, and another, okay, so this is actually 4 people. One there, one there, one there, one there. Okay. So there's that. Upon information and belief throughout the years with Mr. Combs, there were 4 terrifying intimate encounters that Miss Lampros endured. According to Miss Lampros, Mr. Combs had a terrible temper and often threatened to harm her if she failed to do what he said, if he witnessed her talking to other men, or if she failed to take his phone calls. According to Miss Lampros, she was not allowed to talk about her relationship with Mr. Combs to anyone because he did not want anyone to know he was seeing her because she is a white woman. That's interesting because this is before, because he has dated white women, but this is probably before that was introduced. This is back in 94. So maybe he hadn't gotten comfortable with that, presenting that to the public, but he absolutely has dated white women. So, okay, so let me just go on down. Intimate assault encounter number 1. This is the first horrific intimate encounter that occurred in 1995, when Ms. Lampros met up with Mr. Combs in south of Houston Street, Soho, at a bar. She was introduced to a woman named, and she redacted the name, and the group lightly drank throughout the evening. At the time, Ms. Lampros was a college student and did not drink any alcohol. Okay, but due to Mr. Combs' delusional and violent outburst, she succumbed to pressure and reluctantly drank with Mr. Combs and this redacted woman. As they drank, Miss Lampros began to feel uneasy. At this point, she had only had a few sips of one drink. Miss Lampros and the redacted woman were guided to a vehicle and left the bar with Mr. Combs. Okay, they arrived at the Millennium Hotel. While at the hotel, Miss Lampros continued to feel uneasy. She recalls feeling like the walls were closing in on her. Damn, was he slipping Mickeys? That back then? She was laid on the hotel bed with Mr. Combs forced himself on top of her. Mr. Combs began to kiss Miss Lampros, and as she turned her head, trying to avoid the interaction, he grabbed her face. Mr. Combs continued to forcefully stick his tongue down her mouth or kiss her. Miss Lampros informed her that she wasn't feeling well, but he ignored her words and continued to unclothe her. Miss Lampros tried to hold onto her clothing, but she felt weak and powerless in the situation. Miss Lampros pleaded with Mr. Combs to stop, and he ignored her. Miss Lampros could not process why this was occurring and felt a loss of control. Okay, Blackburn is putting 10 on it. But whatever, we're going to go with this. Miss Lampros was being graped by unwanted intimacy by Mr. Combs, and she soon passed out. The next morning, Miss Lampros was awoken by the sun peering through the drapes. She was unclothed, nude, sore, and confused. Miss Lampros quickly got out of bed, clothed herself, and left the hotel as fast as she could. Months after the first grape, Mr. Combs pursued Miss Lampros. He sent her gifts, cards, flowers, and used his power and access to music industry events to lure Miss Lampros back to him. Miss Lampros was a hopeful yet naive college student and took Mr. Combs at his word, believed that the first grape was a possible mulligan, and decided to give him a second chance. At the time, Miss Lampros was a college student in her late teens, early 20s. Her decision to return to Mr. Combs after being graped is indicative of many assault survivors who return to their abusers. Ms. Lampros agreed to meet with Mr. Combs to discuss the business opportunities that he promised. Always lures them in with the business opportunities, using that power, as he knew her passion was to pursue a career in fashion and music. She probably did think she hit a lick with this. She probably was like, you know what? He's got connections. Let me go at least listen to this. So they met up and talked near his Manhattan apartment, which was somewhere near the 30th Street at the time. Ms. Lampros was under the impression that what had occurred months prior between them would not happen again. And she was holding on to Mr. Combs' promise of access to this industry to pursue her passion, which again was the networking piece. Says Mr. Combs was respectful, he regained her trust, and used their common interactions with Arista Records, the parent company of Bad Boy, and Miss Lampros was an intern at Arista Records. Oh, so did he get her a job? Things seemed to be normal between the two until the second incident of SA, or intimate assault. Says this is the second one. They're going into the intimate assault, that encounter number 2. Just during a second incident of intimate assault, Mr. Combs and Miss Lampros were in the parking garage near his Manhattan apartment. She believes it was somewhere near 30th Street, and they were headed to dinner, and Mr. Combs was slightly inebriated. So as they headed towards the parking garage, he grabs Miss Lampros by the waist and forced her down to her knees. He quickly unzips his pants, exposing his schlong. He then grabs her by the hair and wrapping it around his fist. Wow. Grabs her hair and wraps it around his fist. And then he forced himself into her mouth and demanded that Miss Lampros perform sloppy toppy. And as Miss Lampros' eyes filled with tears, because I'm imagining since he's grabbing her hair, she could see the parking garage attendant witnessing this horrific assault. This had no impact on Diddy and Mr. Combs. He was blinded by his lustful desire to pleasure himself at Miss Lampros' expense. So the parking garage attendant saw that and didn't do it, or he thought this was like a couple, aging. He didn't stop. Says when Mr. Combs was done with her, he told her to get up. Miss Lampros was in shock, morally depleted, embarrassed, and in physical agony because Mr. Combs violently was yanking her down to her knees and pulling her hair. Once again, Miss Lampros made the decision to distance herself. And once again, Mr. Combs came back love-bombing her with gifts and empty promises. Miss Lampros was not moved this time, though. She had enough and decided to focus on her studies and to leave Mr. Combs for good. Unbeknownst to Miss Lampros, Diddy was not good at accepting rejection. I do believe that this is partially his problem. He does not accept rejection well. Just from the stories that we keep hearing with Cassie trying to leave and alleged blowing up of Kid Cudi's car, the stories I've heard about Kim, and as she's tried to leave and people that she's dealt with ending up deceased shortly after. Yeah, it doesn't look like he deals with it. And I'm not saying he's tied to that because allegedly, that's all alleged. I don't know. But it appears that he's not good with the rejection. Says he immediately switched his approach and became angry, threatening, and forceful. He developed this mobster persona, and Miss Lampros was in fear of him. Mr. Combs began calling Miss Lampros insistently and would often call her just to say, if anyone is in your apartment, I will beat your ass and theirs. Wow. That's the compulsive. That's one of the negative sides of, I hate to say this, of Scorpios, where you can become obsessed, compulsive behavior. This is really the need to control. So this is really not that surprising to me. It says Miss Lampros's reasonable fear of Mr. Combs left her feeling stuck with him and with no way out. He knew where she lived and worked and had connections to ensure her compliance with his demands. She felt that if she disobeyed him, he would take her dreams of pursuing a career in his world. Go back. She felt that if she disobeyed him, he would take away her dreams of pursuing a career in his world. Mr. Combs would also threaten to blacklist her in the industry if she tried to mess with him in any way. Lampros's dreams and everything she's been working hard for were in the palm of his hands. This is nuts, to be quite honest with you. I mean, she's working at Arista. She should be networking on her own, and just like not feel so tied to him. I don't know. Let me go on. I mean, I'm not working in that world, so I don't know how he was moving, but this was back in 94. Okay, so let me keep going. So intimate assault encounter number 3. Says one night in 96, Mr. Combs ordered Miss Lampros to his Manhattan. He ordered her to his Manhattan apartment. Mr. Combs' residence was in the 30s in Park Street. That was near the Midtown Tunnel. When Miss Lampros arrived, Kim Porter, so this is where Kim is introduced. This is the first time Kim has been introduced into any of these suits. It says here that she arrived at his place in Midtown. Kim Porter and two other people were present. Mr. Combs introduced the women. They went to a nightclub, and after the club closed, they returned to Mr. Combs' apartment and they began a night of drinking. A couple of hours into the evening, Mr. Combs forced Miss Porter and Miss Lampros to take ecstasy. So he had them doing E. Mr. Combs instructed the women to open their mouths. When they complied with the demand, Mr. Combs forced the pill down their throats to ensure the pills were swallowed. Mr. Combs' hands were so far down Miss Lampros' throat that she gagged. He probably got off on that. He even checked under their tongues. I mean, I know E was like a popular drug back in the, I guess it still is. Just, ravers do it. I mean, to some degree, it's pretty popular. But did he have to have them so intoxicated outside of themselves to get what he wanted? Did he really need them to do that? It says with the combination of alcohol and ecstasy, Ms. Lampros recalls feeling lightheaded and lethargic. And after being forced to take ecstasy, Mr. Combs then demanded Kim to have intimate intercourse with Ms. Lampros. Ms. Lampros vocally opposed this idea. Yes, she said no, she didn't want to do that. But Mr. Combs quickly reminded her that she had no control over the situation as he could make her lose her job. Ms. Lampros knew she had to comply. And this is crazy. I'm saying, no, I don't think I want to do that. Oh, if you don't do it, you're not going to work. That's wild. That is just crazy. Ms. Lampros knew she had to comply because she had witnessed what happens when someone defies Mr. Combs. I would like to hear what she witnessed when someone defied him and who defied him that she's able to speak to. Says she had also threatened and victimized. She had also been threatened and victimized by Mr. Combs and did not want to cause a problem because she feared him. As Mr. Combs demanded Miss Porter and Miss Lampros to engage in intimacy, Mr. Combs sat close by, touched himself for some time before pushing Kim Porter off Miss Lampros and forcing his schlong inside of her and raping her. Miss Lampros felt numb at the moment and emotionally checked out. A few hours later, Miss Lampros recalls being woken up by Mr. Combs and told to leave the residence. Wow. He woke her up and told her to leave. She felt disgusted, ashamed, and embarrassed and couldn't believe what had happened. Shortly after this event, Miss Lampros slowly distanced herself from Mr. Combs. Even though she was reluctant to be with him, he used industry connections and invitations to exclusive events to keep her attached. Mr. Combs went so far as to invite her to Kim Porter's birthday celebration. I mean, probably didn't think anything of it because they had all did whatever they do, And there's threesome deal here that he set up. It says Sean Puffy Combs cordially invites you to attend a birthday celebration in honor of his girlfriend. Oh, he actually called her his girlfriend. Kim Porter, Tuesday, December 16th, 97. I mean, the amount of people that have receipts on what was happening is pretty crazy. She's kept this invitation. Again, this is almost 30 years ago. Tuesday, December 16th, 97 at Cheetah. This is in West 21st Street. In the evening, will feature a special performance by Chico DeBarge. Wow. Is Chico hot back then? This invitation, what is this? This invitation and sexy formal, I was a sexy, quote unquote, sexy formal attire will be required for admission. Sexy formal. Invite admits only one. Okay. End of the road here, the next section. In or about 98, Ms. Lampros found the courage to end her relationship with Mr. Combs. So she continued on with him for quite some time, at least 4 years based on this. She had finally suffered enough. However, this ending was one-sided. Mr. Combs and Kim Porter weren't done with Ms. Lampros. Kim Porter was very resentful of Ms. Lampros after she was forced to engage in intimate acts with Ms. Lampros. It's probably, I wonder if Kim must have known that he was continuing to see her and probably got a little jealous. I mean, I don't know, I'm making this up, but if they're stating, if this girl is alleging that she was resentful of Ms. Lampros, I mean, for what? Other than Kim knew he was continuing. So she dined at Ms. Lampros' place of employment at a bar named Sliver, which was in Soho. And according to Ms. Lampros, Ms. Porter was enraged when she saw her. According to Ms. Lampros, 2 days later, Ms. Porter called her employer and complained to the manager, alleging that Ms. Lampros attempted to poison her. This is wild. She then stated that her boyfriend was Sean Combs and could have the business shut down if he did not immediately terminate Ms. Lampros. Later that evening, the manager told her he had to let her go because Mr. Combs called and demanded that he fire her. So was it Kim that called, or was it Diddy that called? Either way, they got this makes Kim look like somewhat like a victim, but also as an abuser. So it's like almost like she had taken on Diddy's persona. You know what I mean? Like she's using name dropping, using him to get what she wants. That's what it sounds like, but also victimizes her in a way too. So you see both elements. It's like victim and abuser all in one. It says Ms. Lampros believes that Ms. Porter got her fired in retaliation for what Mr. Combs made them do. But I'm sure that wasn't the first time for Kim. I'm sure this kind of activity had been going on for quite some time, is what I suspect. There's this complaint does not make me think this is the first time that Diddy and Kim participated with an additional party or additional parties, whether that be female or male, who knows? But I don't believe it. She might have gotten a step, but I don't think it was I personally don't think, I mean, I don't know, but I don't think it was. I think it's probably because Diddy continued with this woman. Does Ms. Lampros believe that Ms. Porter got her fired in retaliation for what Mr. Combs made them do? According to Ms. Lampros, her boss was afraid of Mr. Combs and his contacts and told her he had to do it, or Mr. Combs could risk getting his business closed. I'm assuming this meant that he would risk getting his business closed. I don't know. It is not worded well. Ms. Lampros called Mr. Combs and he showed no remorse that she was out of a job. In fact, he laughed about it. So he knew this occurred. And at the time she ended their relationship, Ms. Lampros recalls Diddy's wait a minute. At the time she ended their relationship, Ms. Lampros recalls Mr. Combs' schlong being adolescently in both length and width. Okay, she just clowned. Tyrone Blackburn and this plaintiff clearly just clowned him, which is actually pretty funny. She recalls him being circumcised and remembers a tattoo on his chest. And she just said he was adolescent in both girth and length. Adolescent, huh? Yeah, I'm sure he don't like that. Okay, Sean John Clothing. While in a relationship with Mr. Combs, Ms. Lampros was a student at FIT. She had a passion for fashion. Mr. Combs knew this. Mr. Combs promised Ms. Lampros several working opportunities in the fashion and music industry, and the two often discussed his plans to launch his own clothing brand. So this is pre-Sean John. Within months of Lampros ending the relationship, Mr. Combs launched Sean John, just like I said. Okay. Number 4, this is SA intimate assault encounter number 4. Now, according to Ms. Lampros, she saw Mr. Combs at an event at the Rockefeller Center in or about the end of 2000, towards the beginning of 2001. So this is gone. I mean, you're talking about 94. This is 7 years. At the time, Ms. Lampros says Mr. Combs may have been filming a season of Making of the Band. According to Ms. Lampros, when Mr. Combs saw her, he approached Ms. Lampros and asked the camera crew to turn off the cameras to not film their interaction. According to Ms. Lampros, Mr. Combs asked her how she was, expressed to her that he missed her, and asked if she would leave the event at Rockefeller Center with him. Ms. Lampros rejected Mr. Combs and left. Okay, so according to Ms. Lampros, later that evening, he kept calling her and asking if she would come to his apartment on Park Avenue, but she said no. He even offered to send his driver to pick her up. Finally, he offered to come with the driver to pick her up. So he was desperate. According to Ms. Lampros, Mr. Combs does not like the word no. He called a few more times, so she stopped answering the phone. According to Ms. Lampros, a few days later, he called again, begging to see her. Like I say, he's compulsive, doesn't give up, obsessed with what he wants. Reluctantly and regrettably, she allowed him to come over to her apartment located at 4, it's on Central Park West, to hear what he had to say. Ms. Lampros figured it was during the day, doubted that he would try to harm her. According to Ms. Lampros, when she opened the door, his security was sitting in the stairwell. Knowing that security was there made Ms. Lampros feel a little better about letting him in. They sat on the couch, began talking. According to Ms. Lampros, Diddy began apologizing for his past behaviors, started telling her that he was a changed man. Ooh, we saw this. He then showered her with compliments, telling her how good she looked, kept reminiscing about their prior intimate life. He then began dropping hints about them being intimate. Miss Lampros rejected his advances. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Mr. Combs violently grabbed her, forced himself onto her, began kissing her and touching her against her will. And at that point, Miss Lampros fought him off after she quickly realized it was a big mistake to have allowed him to visit her. She told him to leave as she felt that he just wanted to use her for an intimate act and hadn't changed at all. Even more disgusting was the fact that Miss Lampros knew that Mr. Combs was involved in a very public relationship. Oh, so this happened. He was in a very public relationship with J-Lo. So this happened during the time that he was with Jennifer. Oh, well, you know, Gene, the bodyguard that everybody talks about, Gene's been all over YouTube. He did talk about how Diddy was clearly seeing other people during the time that he was with J-Lo. He was obsessed with him during that time. So it's not that hard to believe that he's, you know, flaunting around or creeping around with other people as well. He kept this chick around for a long time. But yeah, this is Diddy with J-Lo. What else it says? It says, according to several media reports, I would love to know what really occurred, but she seems like she's going to keep these secrets and not talk about her time with him. I'm talking about J-Lo. It says, according to several media reports from that time, Mr. Combs ended his relationship with J-Lo due to infidelity. Yeah, I just said that. And it's kind of known that he was kind of doing his own thing. Due to infidelity in February of 2001, this was around the same time Mr. Combs intimately assaulted Miss Lampros. Luckily for Miss Lampros, the couch was right near the door of the apartment, so it was easy for her to reach for the door, open it, and demand for him to leave. She ensured that his security could hear her telling him to exit. She was afraid that Mr. Combs would have raped her, as he does not take no for an answer and had a history of violently handling her and forcing her to perform sloppy toppy on him. Now, Miss Lampros is in possession of several of Mr. Combs' phone numbers throughout the years. Okay. And so, yeah, people keep everything. You guys see this? I guess these were his phone numbers. It says Miss Lampros discovered that Mr. Combs recorded and disclosed a tape of him having intimacy with her. According to Miss Lampros, in or about 2023, Miss Lampros was at a function, and a gentleman whose name has been redacted informed the man that Miss Lampros was dating that he should reconsider dating her because he personally saw a video of her and Sean Combs being intimate. And according to Miss Lampros, the redacted name, the guy shared that he saw the tape during the summer of '97. So 3 years into them, you know, being meeting or whatever, because I think she said she met him in '94. According to Miss Lampros, I'm sorry, according to Mr. Lampros, she was telling me. Okay, I'm sure this was supposed to be Miss. Okay, according to Miss Lampros, even though he has Mr. Tyrone, you gotta check for these grammatical errors. But according to Lampros, I'm assuming this is Miss Lampros, she was told that Mr. Combs apparently recorded them having an intimate moment without her knowing and showed it to multiple people. All right, so then he goes into battery, okay? Ms. Lampros incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. This is the first cause of action as a battery charge. The defendant committed battery against Ms. Lampros when he forcefully went into orally into the mouth and the vaginal area against her will, as detailed in the 4 encounters above. In addition, Ms. Combs, why does he not check this stuff? In addition, Mr. Combs, says Miss Combs, Mr. Combs physically assaulted Ms. Lampros when he pulled her hair and forced her to perform the oral on him in an open parking garage with the parking attendant watching. Okay. Defendant Combs intentionally and without her consent attacked Ms. Lampros to satisfy his intimate desires. Under all circumstances, the defendant's physical contact with Ms. Lampros was offensive and wrongful. Defendant Combs continued to attack Ms. Lampros despite her attempts to thwart his actions. The defendant's conduct was the direct and proximate cause of Mr. Lampros' past and future substantial damages, including significant pain. So it was foreseeable. This was foreseeable that she would have significant pain and suffering, lasting psychological and financial harm, loss of dignity, invasion of privacy. He was the proximate cause of that. So the defendant's actions constitute intimate offenses as defined in Article 130 New York Penal Law, including but not limited to intimate misconduct and forcible touching. And the plaintiff's claim for battery is thus timely under the Gender Motivated Violence Act. She goes on, there's a second cause of action here. This is assault, and we're talking SA. All right, so Ms. Lampros incorporates by reference all the preceding paragraphs and realleges them as if set forth fully herein. Okay, so it says that as described above, the defendant's Combs frightened and placed plaintiff in apprehension of harm when he physically assaulted her within the city of New York. Defendant forcibly touched and attempted or threatened to touch plaintiff's intimate areas and or touch her with his intimate body parts. As a result of defendant Combs' conduct, the plaintiff has suffered and continues to suffer harm, including physical injury, severe emotional distress, humiliation, anxiety, other consequential damages, for which is entitled to an award of monetary damages and other relief. Okay. The conduct of the defendant Combs described above was willful, was wanton, and malicious. At all relevant times, the defendants acted with conscious disregard for the plaintiff's rights and feelings, acted with a knowledge of or reckless disregard for the fact that his conduct was certain to cause injury, humiliation to the plaintiff, and intended to cause fear, physical injury and or pain and suffering to the plaintiff. By virtue of the foregoing, plaintiff is entitled to recover punitive damages. Okay. And then she's suing him for negligent infliction of emotional distress. And here it says the defendant's conduct created an unreasonable risk of emotional distress to the plaintiff, and the defendant knew or should have known that such conduct was likely to result in emotional distress that might or likely cause illness or bodily harm. The defendant's conduct was wanton, malicious, willful, cruel, entitling the plaintiff to punitive damages. Sorry, guys. Just looking at something here. Okay, let's go on to the fourth cause of action. This is violation of the victim's gender motivated violence protection law. Give me a second here, guys. Okay, sorry, guys. I had to close my window because clearly the neighbors are jamming a little bit too much. I mean, I know it's Memorial Day weekend, but yeah, that was a little bit too much. I was like, you interrupted my recording here, so I had to pause and go close my windows. Okay, let's see here. So this is the fourth cause of action. It actually just states it's a violation of the victim's gender motivated violence protection law. And it just says that the above described conduct of defendant Combs, including but not limited to Combs SA of the plaintiff in New York City, constitutes a crime of violence against the plaintiff. And it's a crime of violence that's motivated by gender, as defined by the statute. And they go on to talk about the term crime, quote unquote, crime of violence, that it means an act of or a series of acts that would constitute a misdemeanor or a felony against the person as defined by the state or the federal law, or that would constitute a misdemeanor or a felony against property as defined in the state or federal law if the conduct presents a serious risk of physical injury to another, whether or not those acts have actually resulted in criminal charges, prosecution, or conviction. And the term crime of violence motivated by gender means a crime of violence committed because of gender or on the basis of gender, due at least in part to an animus based on the victim's gender. Okay. I was just taking a look at this third complaint, this negligent infliction of emotional distress. Okay. All right. So I'm not gonna read all that. I think. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I should. Okay, let me jump down to 104. So it says the defendant, this would be Sony Music, and their subsidiary Arista Records enabled Mr. Combs to commit the crime of violence motivated by gender and are therefore also liable under this act, this Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Protection Law. As detailed above, Miss Lampros worked for Arista Records during Mr. Combs' assault. She did. She worked there. Bad Boy Records was a subsidiary of Arista Records. And at the time, Miss Lampros reported to her manager, Jeff, who was an agent of Arista Records. Okay. Defendants are an SME enabled Mr. Combs' commission of the crimes of violence motivated by gender, and thus are liable under the New York City Victims of Gender Motivated Protections Act. Defendants AR and SME enabled or participated in the intimate abuse of the plaintiff because the defendants failed to, among other things, protect the plaintiff from a known danger, have sufficient policies and procedures in place to prevent intimate assault, properly implement policies and procedures to prevent intimate assault, take reasonable measures to ensure that policies to prevent SA were working, train their employees on identifying SA and inappropriate workplace behaviors, protect their employees from SA, and adhere to the applicable standard of care. That's odd. They didn't train. Maybe they didn't at the time. It says the defendants AR enabled or participated in the abuse of the plaintiff because the defendants failed to timely and properly educate, train, supervise, or monitor their agents or employees regarding the policies and procedures that should be followed when SA is suspected or observed. Prior to Combs' saying with ING plaintiff, Arista Records knew or should have known that Combs was not fit to be in a position of authority. Defendants by and through their agents, servants, or employees became aware or should have become aware of Combs' propensity to commit SA and of the risk to plaintiff's safety. At the very least, the defendants knew or should have known that they did not have sufficient information about whether or not their leaders, managers, and people were safe to be in positions of power. The defendant Arista Records knew or should have known that Combs posed a risk of SA. Defendant Arista failed to properly supervise Combs, protect the plaintiff from known danger, thereby enabling Combs' repeated SAs on plaintiff. The defendant Arista Records negligently deemed Mr. Combs was fit to be in a position of authority and or that any previous suitability problems that Mr. Combs had were fixed or cured, and or that Mr. Combs would not commit acts of SA, and or that Mr. Combs would not injure others. This is interesting. Let's see here. Moreover, the defendant Arista Records enabled the SA of the plaintiff by actively maintaining and employing the Mr. Combs in a position of power and authority through which Mr. Combs had control over people, including the plaintiff. I guess I'm wondering, these settings were never in a workplace setting? And I'm wondering if he had some sort of any interaction over her. It was being, or involvement in her being employed with Arista. Okay, it says as a direct and proximate result of the aforementioned crime of violence and gender motivated violence, the plaintiff has sustained and will continue to sustain monetary damages, physical injury, pain and suffering, serious psychological and emotional distress, entitling her to an award of compensatory and punitive damages, injunctive and declaratory relief, attorneys' fees and costs, and other remedies as this court may deem appropriate, damages as set forth in whatever the statute is. Says the above described conduct of the defendants constitutes an intimate offense as defined in Article 130 of New York Penal Law. And pursuant to the statute, this cause of action is timely because it is commenced within 2 years and 6 months after September 1st, 2022. They're asking for a prayer for relief, for money judgment representing compensatory damages, including consequential damages, lost wages, earnings, and all other sums of money together with interest on these amounts according to proof, for money judgment for mental pain and anguish and severe emotional distress according to proof, for punitive and exemplary damages according to proof, for attorney fees and costs, for prejudgment and post-judgment interest, and such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. And you have Tyrone Blackburn's signature here. All right. So that is, give me a second. All right. So that is the latest on this new Diddy complaints. This is after the one that we reviewed the other day on Crystal. This is April Lampros. Okay. So another day, as I said the other day, another lawsuit. We'll see how Diddy responds to this. He does have 30 days, I'm sure, to respond and provide something back to the attorney, to the courts on this lawsuit. All right, so we'll be tracking this and seeing what happens. I mean, there's just so many. In a second, like I said, there's going to be very little for his kids that are left with all these lawsuits. So we'll be tracking this and seeing what comes out of it. I would like for somebody, it's not going to be me, to do a deep dive on Kim Porter and just what happened with Kim. What kind of activities was she involved in with Diddy? Victim or potential abuser, whatever the case may be. She's not here, so she really can't defend herself. So it's somewhat unfair to even include her in this lawsuit, to be honest with you. But her name has just come up so much, and there's just so many questions surrounded her death and things like that. And so it just begs the question, what sort of activities did Diddy have this woman involved in? So may her spirit rest, but may we find out what was going on. All right, guys, I think that's it. Please like and subscribe to this page. It's a new YouTube account, and we're just getting started, but like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you later, and we'll keep tracking. All right, have a good one.